After 3 years of blood, sweat, and tears, and time, sort of late hours, I can finally say that my story is finally over. And what do I mean by that? Well, we're going to talk about in this video because I've got quite a lot of ground to cover, and it's why I didn't post Thursday, because I was basically trying to power on through, grind it out, because it was time to finally end this. Literally close the book on this, as the saying likes to go. So, anyway, without further ado, let's get started in on it. So what am I talking about? What do I mean by a story, and why it took sort of 3 years? So what I'm referring to is around 3 years ago, in March of 2022, I sort of was concocting an idea. And this idea started to grow when I was playing Fallout New Vegas and trying out Tale of the Two Wastelands, a mod that combines Fallout 3 and New Vegas together. And basically, there was a mod called the Elizabeth Companion, aka Elizabeth from Bioshock Infinite, but as a companion for New Vegas. Mod worked decently and well enough. It had a nice little backstory to it. And by the time I was done playing with it and beat a playthrough of the game with, her as a companion, there was a part of me that was like, I don't know, sort of inspired that there was like a story behind this that I could make. And the first thing I did was I went looking around to see if anyone else had thought of it, and no one had. And I was also curious to know if anyone had actually written any Tale of Two Wastelands sort of fan fictions of Fallout 3 and New Vegas. Basically, the Lone Wanderer and the Courier being the same character. That's kind of the gist of what Tale of Two Wastelands is basically putting Fallout 3 in New Vegas and putting the two games together and giving a more awesome and complete package. But anyway, once I started getting the gears turning a bit, I decided to go back and play Bioshock Infinite and its DLC for the first time in a few years. And then I also looked up other fan fictions that people have made in Bioshock, which some were good, some not so good. But it's kind of the realm when you go into fan fiction. Sometimes they're completed, though much more rare than incompleted, because people, time, things happen, that kind of thing. And so I finally, after seeing all these things and piecing it together, the idea struck in my head, why don't I give it a shot? I got nothing to lose here. Why don't I give this a shot and see how well I do? Because I was already fresh coming off of a terrible experience with therapy, and I had looked into that this could be a form of therapy to sort of help, with some struggles I was going on with at the time. So that's what this is basically about, this entire video, is I wrote a fan fiction that combined Bioshock 1 and Infinite into Fallout 3 and New Vegas and A Tale of Two Wastelands, and made, and I'm not even kidding, as I'm looking at the word count for both the Archive of Our Own and fanfiction.net listing, you are looking at a total of 37 chapters and 213,000 to 210,000 words. That is a lot of writing. To put it in perspective, my word count is more than all of the Harry Potter books except Order of the Phoenix in terms of their total word count. Order of the Phoenix has roughly a 257,000 word count, whereas all the other Harry Potter books have less than 200,000 words. And then also, to put it in even more perspective, that is more than any Lord of the Rings book. That, I cannot believe I somehow did this. That's what makes this so monumental and shocking to me, is that I made, keep in mind the inspirations of this. I somehow made this work. And if you're worried about their big spoilers for some reason, I'm not going to share any spoilers here. I do not want to spoil this because kind of shameless plug, I do want you to kind of read it yourself, but I will read at least the synopsis, or rather the sort of opening part of it. And it goes like this. Trauma, loss, and loneliness. These things still follow Evan years after leaving DC, haunting him on a regular basis. But when he receives an unknown package about a place called Rapture, he soon discovers something unexpected that changes his life forever. And then I put there's spoilers for Bioshock 1 specifically. 2, I don't really get into really much at all, but spoilers for that as well. Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas and their respective DLCs, kind of. More so Fallout New Vegas maybe, but I don't really dive into the DLCs that much. That's sort of a sequel idea that I have, or I have rather other sequel ideas that I could dive into. But for the most part, to keep it brief and simple, the story, it's very layered, I would say, and it is the first time I've written something. And I'm generally shocked. Like, I have the first draft. I'm never sharing that. The first draft is terrible. Like, it's genuinely your stereotypical kind of, like, startup fan fiction that you'd find buried in the recesses of somewhere in either fanfiction.net or Archive of Our Own. And I'm sure there's probably a question on someone's mind out there, because, you know, when you think of these two websites, you kind of think of this one thing. Is it smut or just something written for the sake of writing something? No, not really much, if at all. And again, I'm not going to dive, like I said, I'm not going to dive into this any more than I need to. I just want to keep this as a surface level because, again, I put a lot of time and effort in this, and I just want people to experience it. You know, have a read yourself. I will admit, though, it is a lot to read. Like, keep in mind, you're reading more than any Lord of the Rings book. That's what makes this so, like, massive of a taking. So I don't know if people have the time to do that. I mean, if people want to know and they want sort of spoilers, I'd be more than happy to make a follow-up kind of video in the future. But, you know, if you have the time, give it a read. You know, it's, like I said, it's not something that's going to be wasting your time and is stupid or anything. I wrote this with whatever feedback I could get in mind, as I didn't get much feedback. Like, in the early days of writing this, I did, but eventually I stopped getting feedback, and I wish I had gotten more, which I do kind of talk about in the FAQ that I wrote, because there is an FAQ written at the end that I am sort of following here. And obviously I'm not going to dive into everything because the FAQ has many spoilers. But one of the biggest challenges or struggles when it came to writing this was I felt like I was writing in an echo chamber. And it's in no way whatsoever to discredit the people that gave support, viewed, read, and anything. It's just one of the reasons why this did take literally 3 years is because there was a point, like, how this started was I was in college, and I was sort of writing this while I was in class because I was treating class as sort of a podcast, and some of the classes I had were just not really informative to me. And, you know, when I'm writing this, it looks like I'm taking notes. So really, it was something I kind of got away with in a sense. But anyway, once I graduated college, I had finished, I want to say at least almost 20 chapters, or roughly 20 chapters, because a couple months after I graduated, I had to leave Colorado, which is where I was at the time, because I had to go back home and help some family in California for 10 months. And during those 10 months, I was getting sort of writer's block, burned out, and my priority was elsewhere, which I won't dive into it. So for about 10 months, I was doing that, and I hadn't written a single chapter during that period, at least not to my recollection, or if I did, it was one chapter, and I didn't upload it or finish it really until I got out to South Dakota. Now, actually, now that I think about it, I did write one chapter, just to double check and clarify. But in hindsight, I do kind of wish I had written more during that period because I had a lot more time, but it is what it is, you know. Better late than never. And if anything, I had this finished right on cue, right on time, 3 years after I uploaded the first chapter. So literally, it's a literal exact 3-year thing. You know, it's like George Lucas likes to say, and I see in those clips online, you know, it's like poetry. It sort of rhymes. But anyway, that was one of the struggles, is I was getting writer's block. I didn't feel like I was getting much feedback, and I was hoping I was writing a good story. And I proofread this multiple times, and I don't know if anyone watching this has written a book or anything, but to give an insight to those who have it, and keep in mind, this is not me going through a publishing thing. This could never be published. It's literally using copyrighted material. But I had to rewrite and make sure things lined up as best as possible, and, you know, make sure things made sense. Because there were a few times where I didn't follow the show, don't tell, or I should have followed more. Less is more. Like sometimes I had characters saying exactly how they feel instead of sort of implying through their actions and how they feel. But again, it's what happens. You're going to rewrite things multiple times. Like the first chapter, the final draft compared to the first one is so much better. It really is, because it adds much more context and world building. Now, obviously, maybe I could do one more final draft or something, but I think in its core right now, in its structure, it's complete. There's nothing more I really want to add. The only thing is maybe I could have done more chapters, but again, at this point, it's 37 chapters long and 210,000 words. Like, that's a lot of writing. I think there's a point, it's like, I think we should kind of wrap this up a bit here. So, that's basically the FAQs without getting into spoilers or ruining anything. So, what does this mean post creating all of this? Because I guess what I've been thinking about the last 24 hours has just been, what does it mean for the future for me, since I no longer have a sort of therapy book to write or go to? So I don't really have a clear answer. It's only been, 24 hours, but I mean, I have some ideas for writing, like, I have sort of a Last of Us Part 2 rewrite idea, and I have some ideas diving into the DLCs, but for the most part, that's about it, really. One of the things that, and it was affecting my life personally, was just this being on the back of my mind as not being finished, and then, again, sitting down to try to finish this. Like, I did enjoy writing it, and maybe it's because it went on for far too long, and I should have cut these into 2 books. Though I don't know where I would cut it into the second book. That's the thing that makes this so hard, is where do you cut this in when you read it? There's one point I could have, and honestly, maybe, I think it was like 20 chapters. Maybe I could have cut this and stopped it, and then maybe did like a part 2 that way, and then maybe be like a part 3, is like have a sort of trilogy. But in the end, I ultimately settled with just trying to finish the story and wrap it up, because it was getting too much in my life to have in the back of my head. That's all. And now that it's finished, a sort of weight has been taken off of my shoulder, and now it feels like I could start catching up on other things that I've sort of fell behind with. Like, I'm not even going to church tomorrow, and possibly not even going to Bible study Thursday, just because I need to catch up and get some things caught up in my life. Because I literally, the last chapter, to put it in perspective, is 8,000 words, which it's not the first time I've written 8,000 words in a chapter before. I believe it was chapter 20 that I did that. But that's like, that, if I remember correctly, it was like 18 or 19 pages. Like, it doesn't seem like that's a lot, but it's like, it is. Like, writing really drains you out when you're trying to finish it or power through and everything. And it's just, on average, the chapter word length was about 5,000 words. That's the kind of goal, the 4,500 to 6,000 word length I went to, unless I absolutely had to stretch it out a bit. And the last chapters, like, I want to say the last 4 chapters do push the word count a bit to the limit. And at one point I had to cut, like, I believe it was 33 and 34. I had to cut that chapter in half because it was getting too big and bloated. And I'd rather just, cut it in half and then just have them be 2 separate chapters. So there's a lot of stuff and layers that comes to writing this thing. And I probably took this way more seriously than I should have, because, it's a fan fiction, but I just don't really like that word, I guess, much anymore. But I think it's just because I've just put this story in such a high regard and how I view it. And obviously, it's my first story. I know it's probably not perfect, and there's probably things that could be improved. But, I mean, hey, I wrote it, I did it, and really, I think this just is impressive that I finished it. Because a lot of fan fictions out there, you don't see them getting finished. They just stay incomplete till the end of time, probably. Or just, rather, forgotten. And I didn't forget about this. It was always in the back of my head, and I'm really proud of it. I really am. And, I don't know what the future's going to hold for this. I think it'll still be popular on some level. Like, already the BioShock Fallout crossovers aren't really that popular to begin with, and mine is considered, at least according to fan fiction's statistics, mine is the most popular. And, that's an achievement of itself, too. Because, like I said, if you go back to what inspired me originally, I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I somehow did it, but I did it. And I still stayed to the source material as much as I could while respecting all the characters and where they came from, as well as gave them a natural progression in their character evolution, so to speak. So I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, without going into spoilers, I will leave a link in the description to both the fanfiction.net or Archive of Our Own link. But read whichever one you prefer in terms of like how they present the chapters and everything. And, you know, let me know how you felt about it. You know, like I said, first time writing it. It's not going to be perfect, but anyway, that's all I really have in this video. Schedule will be back to normal this upcoming week. Want to apologize again for not having a Thursday upload, but ultimately I just took a lot more time to get this done, and I got it done. And I also want to apologize because I thought I was going to be getting a new mic. The mic that I was recommended does not have all the parts needed, and when I took it to a Guitar Center to where I could maybe get those parts for it, it would have cost me $200. So I returned the mic, and I'm just going to stick with this mic until I get to full-time working and I get some cash in my pocket to buy a much more PC-oriented mic. So, going to be still using the headset mic, which, I don't know, I kind of like the headset mic just because it keeps the sort of organic, natural, down-to-earth kind of feel for the channel I'm wanting to go for right now. Obviously, a better mic will help that on some level, but I just kind of want to still keep this, like, you know, subtle. I don't really like using the word low-key, but subtle and just more grounded, down-to-earth, whatever word you want to use. So, anyway, feel free to give a like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell to when I upload. We are still on the road to 150 subscribers. We still got 8 to 9 days left of this month. And as of recording, I am at 128 subscribers. So, we're getting there. I'm looking forward to it. So, see you guys on Tuesday.